The bell rang. The new girl stood at the door. The teacher didn't look up. "Say your name," she said. "It's Lena Chen," the girl whispered. "Lin Chin," the teacher said. Laughter. "Answer properly." A boy whispered, "It's Chun." But the teacher cut him off. "You'll be performing soon, Lena. By Friday." She smiled and tapped her clipboard. The front row held polished violins and bright smiles. Lena froze. "Perform what?" The teacher closed the door and faced the room. "Listen up. Friday is evaluation day. Public. One by one." She tapped the piano lid. "Mistakes will not be corrected. They will be remembered." The class went quiet. She turned to the front row. "Timothy, Rachel, David, you three are ready. You represent this school." They smiled. She nodded like it was already decided. Then her eyes slid to the back. "Some of you will embarrass yourselves. That's not my fault." A few kids shifted. Someone snorted. Lena kept her head down. She pressed her palms together under the desk. The teacher paced. "This is not a game. This is how I decide who belongs in this program." She stopped. "If you can't handle pressure, don't waste our time." A girl near Lena whispered, "You can just pretend you're sick." The teacher's head snapped around. "No excuses. Everyone performs." Lena felt heat climb her neck. She pulled her sweater sleeves over her hands. She stared at the floor. She made herself small, invisible. Friday was 4 days away, and she had nothing to play. Lena thought she was safe in the back. She kept her eyes on her notebook. She counted the minutes. But when the last bell was about to ring, the teacher stopped the class. "Lena." The room shifted. Chairs creaked. "Yes, ma'am." The teacher tilted her head. "You've been watching the piano every day." Lena froze. "I was just." "You stare at it," the teacher said. "Every class." A few kids turned to look. Rachel smiled faintly. The teacher walked closer. "If you're so interested, you must have something to show." "I don't," Lena said quickly. "Oh, you will." The teacher faced the class. Change of plan. Friday, Lena performs first. Gasped. Someone whispered, "First." Lena's hands shook. "Please. I've never." The teacher cut her off. "No excuses. We're done hiding today." She pointed at the piano bench. "Sit." The room went silent. Lena stood halfway, then stopped. Every face was on her. "Now," the teacher said. Lena took one step toward the piano, and didn't know what would happen next. Lena walked home alone. The street was loud with other kids, but nobody walked beside her. She cut through the side alley and climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs. The apartment door stuck when she pushed it open. Inside, everything was quiet. There was a note on the table. "Working late. Soup in the pot. Love you." She heated the soup and ate standing up. The chair wobbled if she leaned on it too long. After, she washed the bowl and lined it up with the only other plate they owned. Her room was small. A bed, a desk, a lamp that flickered. She dropped her backpack and sat on the floor. For a while she did nothing, just listened to the pipes knock in the walls. Then she pulled a folded sheet of paper from under the bed. She spread it on the floor carefully. It was covered in black and white rectangles, drawn with a ruler. Every key measured. Every space counted. Paper keyboard. She placed her hands over it. Hovered. At first she only tapped scales. Quiet. Even quieter. No sound at all. She closed her eyes. Her fingers moved on their own. Slow at first, then faster. She played a piece she wasn't supposed to remember. She played the part that always came after the hard section. Her shoulders loosened. Her breathing slowed. For a few minutes she wasn't in the apartment. She wasn't in the classroom. She wasn't on a bench with everyone staring. She was somewhere else. When she finished, she folded the paper and slid it back under the bed. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Friday was coming, and she still had no idea how to survive it. The next night, Lena came home to the same quiet. Another note. Another bowl of soup. She didn't take out the paper keyboard right away. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall. There was a faint mark where a picture frame used to hang. She pressed her fingers together, curved them, just like she'd been taught. Her mom used to sit beside her on a real piano bench. Not behind her, beside her. "We're partners," she'd say. "Not teacher and student. Partners." Lena had been 3 when it started. Every morning after breakfast. 30 minutes. No skipping. No bargaining. Her mom would tap the keys and say, "Again." And Lena would do it again. Scales. Then chords. Then little songs. Then harder songs. When Lena complained, her mom would smile and say, "Your fingers are learning before your brain does. Let them." By 5, she had recitals. By 6, competitions. Little trophies lined up on the piano top. But Lena never thought of herself as special. It was just routine, like brushing her teeth. Her mom kept notebooks, practice logs, lesson plans, times, corrections. Everything was structured, formal, serious. That was the part nobody at school knew. They saw a quiet girl with old shoes. They didn't see the hours, the drills, the discipline. They didn't see the girl who used to practice 2 hours a day. Lena lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. She hadn't touched a real piano in over a year. Her fingers still remembered. But she didn't know if her hands would listen anymore. The year everything stopped was the year the piano left. It happened fast. First came the hospital visits. Then the bills. Then the quiet phone calls late at night when Lena was supposed to be asleep. Her mom got thinner. Her hair fell out. The piano stayed closed. For months, nobody played. After the funeral, men came with a clipboard. They walked through the house and wrote numbers down. They stopped at the piano longer than anywhere else. Her dad argued, soft at first, then louder. "It's the only thing she has left," he said. The men shook their heads. 2 weeks later, a truck parked outside. Lena sat on the stairs with her knees pulled to her chest and watched them wrap the piano in gray blankets. She pressed her hands over her ears, but she could still hear the legs scrape across the floor. When they lifted it into the truck, her dad turned away. That was the day she stopped practicing. After that, everything kept moving. They sold the house. Then they moved to a smaller place. Then smaller again. Each time her dad said, "Just for now." Each time there was no room for a piano. No money for lessons. No space. At first, Lena tried to practice on the table. Then on the counter. Then on nothing at all. Months passed. Her fingers stiffened. She stopped talking about music. She stopped opening her old notebooks. She told herself that part of her life was over. By the time they moved into the apartment near the school, she hadn't played a real note in 14 months. Only paper. Only silence. Lena lay on her bed and stared at her hands. Friday was 3 days away, and she had no instrument, no teacher, no place to hide. She wondered what would happen when the teacher finally found out. After the piano left, the paper came. Her dad brought home a roll of butcher paper from the diner where he worked nights. He spread it on the kitchen table and measured every inch with a ruler. He drew each key carefully. Black, white, space just right. "This is temporary," he said. It wasn't. Every night, after homework, Lena taped the paper to the table. She lined up the chair so her feet touched the floor the same way they used to touch the pedals. She curved her fingers. She counted to 4. And she played. No sound. Just tapping. Scales first. Always scales. Then arpeggios. Then the pieces her hands still remembered. She practiced mistakes, not songs. Slow. Exact. Again. When her fingers slipped, she stopped and reset them. No one corrected her. No one clapped. Sometimes her dad watched from the doorway. He never said anything. He just nodded once and went back to the sink. Weeks turned into months. She practiced even when she was tired. Even when her hands hurt. Even when she told herself it was pointless. At school, she stayed quiet. At home, she kept playing. She stopped dreaming about stages. She stopped imagining concerts. She told herself she was only keeping her hands busy. Not training. Not preparing. Just surviving. But every night, Before she folded the paper away, she tested one hard passage. The one her mom said meant something important. She always failed the first time. She always tried again and again. No one ever knew if she improved. No teacher, no judge, no proof, only her hands. On Thursday night, she practiced longer than usual. Her fingers moved faster than they had in months. She stopped suddenly, stared at the paper, and wondered, for the first time, if Friday might expose more than just her fear. The first time Lena tried to talk about music at her old school, she was 7. A boy had asked what she did after class. She said, "I play piano." He laughed. "On a toy," she said. "On a real one." The next day, he told everyone she was lying. At a birthday party, another girl asked her to play. Lena said she couldn't because there was no piano. "So you're fake," the girl said. Once, a substitute teacher asked who took lessons. Lena raised her hand halfway. The teacher looked at her shoes and said, "Anyone else?" Her hand dropped. At her last school, she tried again. She told a girl she used to do recitals. The girl smiled and said, "Sure you did." After that, Lena stopped explaining. She stopped correcting people when they mispronounced her name. She stopped answering questions in class unless she was called on. She learned where to sit so nobody would look at her. She learned how to fold herself into corners. Invisibility became a skill. The day Mrs. Carter had called her Lynn in front of the class, Lena almost fixed it. She didn't. She remembered every time speaking had made things worse. She remembered the looks, the whispers, the way people decided who you were before you finished a sentence. So she stayed quiet. When the teacher watched the favorites play, Lena watched the floor. When the piano shined in the front of the room, Lena pretended not to see it. Because attention had a cost. Because once people noticed you, they decided what you deserved. Thursday night, she lay awake in the dark. She imagined standing at the piano. She imagined laughing. She imagined silence. She imagined failing on the first note. She turned onto her side and pressed her hands under the pillow. If she could disappear on Friday, she would. But the teacher had already chosen her. And there was no way back into hiding now. Friday morning came too fast. Lena walked into the classroom and went straight to the back seat. Same desk. Same corner. She kept her backpack on her lap like a shield. The teacher started class like nothing was wrong. "Timothy, show us your scales." "Perfect." "Rachel, tempo exercise." "Perfect." The teacher nodded after every note. When David missed a rhythm, she corrected him gently. When Lena shifted in her seat, the teacher glanced at her and said nothing. The piano waited at the front of the room. It always waited. Lena tried not to look at it. She failed. Her eyes went there anyway, just for a second. Then away. The teacher noticed. She always noticed. During warm-ups, the girl beside Lena whispered, "You okay?" Lena nodded. She wasn't. The teacher announced, "We'll start evaluations after lunch." After lunch. Not now. Not yet. A few kids groaned. A few smiled. The teacher added, "Order is already decided." Her eyes moved, slow and deliberate, to the back row. Then away. Lena felt her throat close. The clock ticked louder than it should have. Every exercise felt longer. Every minute felt stolen. When class ended, the teacher said, "Be on time after lunch. This is not optional." Chairs scraped. Voices returned. Lena stayed seated until the room emptied. She stood slowly. She took one step toward the door. Then she looked at the piano. Just once. She imagined the first note. She imagined her hands slipping. She imagined everyone watching. She left the room without touching anything. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Evaluation was in 3 hours. And nobody knew what she was carrying with her into that room. At lunch, Lena sat at the end of the table like always. She pushed peas around her tray and tried not to think about the afternoon. Someone sat down across from her. It was the girl who shared her row. The one who had whispered earlier. "You're Lena, right?" Lena nodded. "I heard about Friday," the girl said quietly. That you're going first. Lena's stomach tightened. It's okay, she said. It wasn't. The girl hesitated. Mrs. Carter. She can be hard. But she's not unfair. Not really. Lena didn't answer. She only does this to people she thinks might surprise her. The girl went on. My brother had her last year. He thought she hated him. Turned out she was testing him. Testing. Lena looked up. Really? The girl nodded. She embarrassed him once. Then later she helped him get into the advanced group. For a moment, Lena didn't breathe. So, maybe she just wants to see what you can do, the girl said. Maybe. The word felt dangerous. The girl added, if you mess up, she usually stops it fast. She won't let you stand there too long. That helped more than it should have. Lena nodded again. Thank you. After lunch, in the hallway, Mr. Ellis from the science lab passed her. He paused. You're in music, right? Yes, sir. He smiled. Heard you're performing today. Nerves are normal. Teachers don't mean harm most of the time. Most of the time. As he walked away, Lena stood still. Maybe it wouldn't be a trap. Maybe the teacher would stop her quickly. Maybe she wouldn't have to play the hard parts. Maybe this was just another test. She held onto that thought as the bell rang, and followed the others back toward the music room. Lena sat in her seat and didn't open her notebook. Around her, the room filled with noise again. Desks moved. Cases opened. The teacher sorted papers at the front. Evaluation sheets. Lena placed her hands flat on her thighs. She pressed them down until they stopped shaking. In her head, she counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. She saw her mom's hands, guiding hers. Curve them. Don't lock your wrists. She rolled her shoulders once, slow and careful. She remembered the first scale she ever learned. The one in C major. Simple. Clean. She played it in her head. Every note. Every finger. She imagined the bench height. The distance to the pedals. The weight of the keys. She told herself she would start with something easy. She told herself she would stop if she got lost. She told herself she would not cry. Across the room, Rachel was stretching her fingers. Timothy polished his bow. They were ready. Lena closed her eyes. She ran through the opening again. Just the first 4 measures. That was all she needed. Her breathing slowed. The door closed. The teacher turned around. All right, she said. Line up by the piano. Chairs scraped back. One by one, students stood. Lena stayed seated. She waited for her name. She didn't know if she wanted to hear it or not. In her mind, the first note waited. Perfect. Fragile. Unforgiving. She opened her eyes. The line reached the front of the room. The teacher picked up her clipboard and looked straight at Lena. The teacher didn't call Lena first. She called Timothy, then Rachel, then 2 others from the front row. Each performance ended with a nod. A note on the clipboard. A quiet good. Lena stayed in her seat. She tried to breathe. After the 4th student, the teacher stopped writing. She looked up and scanned the room. Slowly, her eyes landed on Lena. They stayed there. Lena shifted in her chair. The teacher made a small mark on the paper. During the next performance, Lena looked down. The teacher cleared her throat. Eyes forward, she said. Lena lifted her head. The teacher watched her the entire time David played. Not the piano. Lena. When Lena swallowed, the teacher wrote something. When Lena moved her hands on her lap, the teacher wrote something. When Lena closed her eyes for a second, the teacher said, Stay awake, please. A few kids turned to look. Lena felt heat climb her face. After David finished, the teacher said, Some of you look very confident for someone who hasn't proven anything yet. She didn't say a name. She didn't have to. The room felt smaller. During warm-ups between turns, the teacher walked past Lena's desk. She paused. You seem very interested today, she said quietly. I'm just listening, Lena whispered. The teacher smiled. Good. You'll need to. She walked back to the front. Lena pressed her hands together until her fingers hurt. Every movement felt wrong. Every breath felt loud. She didn't know when her turn would come. Only that the teacher was no longer waiting for a mistake. She was hunting for one. When the bell rang for a short break between periods, students began to pack up. Chairs scraped. Cases snapped shut. Lena reached for her backpack. She stood slowly and moved toward the aisle. The teacher's voice cut through the room. "Not you, Lena." The room paused. "I need you to stay," the teacher said. Lena froze. "I was just—" "Sit," the teacher said. A few students glanced back as they filed out. Someone whispered her name. When the room was half empty, Lena tried again. She stepped toward the door. The teacher didn't look up from her clipboard. "I said stay." Lena's foot stopped in midair. She went back to her desk. The last student left. The door closed. The teacher finally looked at her. "You're very eager to leave," she said. "I have another class," Lena whispered. "So do I," the teacher said. "And I'm not going anywhere." She flipped a page on her clipboard. "You'll perform at the end of the period." Lena's heart jumped. I changed the order," the teacher said. She stood and walked to the piano. "You can warm up quietly if you like," she added. "Warm up? On the piano? Now?" Lena shook her head. "I'd rather wait." The teacher smiled thinly. "You've waited long enough." She pulled the bench out. "Come here," she said. The hallway bell rang outside. Classes started without her. The door stayed closed. And for the first time, Lena realized she was truly trapped. The door opened without a knock. Mr. Alvarez from the front office stepped in, holding a stack of forms. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "We're updating class lists. Quick question." The teacher turned. "Make it fast." He glanced at Lena, then back at the clipboard. "Is this evaluation mandatory today?" "We had a scheduling conflict with—" "Yes," the teacher said. "Mandatory." Mr. Alvarez hesitated. "Even for new transfers?" "For everyone," she said. He nodded slowly. "All right, I'll note that." He looked at Lena again, longer this time. His eyes softened. "You okay?" he asked her. Lena opened her mouth. The teacher spoke first. "She's just nervous." Lena closed her mouth. Mr. Alvarez shifted his weight. "Well, if there's a problem, you can always—" "There is no problem," the teacher said. Silence stretched. Mr. Alvarez gave a small, uncertain smile. "Then I'll get out of your way." He stepped back into the hall. The door closed. Lena stared at it. For a second, she had thought he might stop this. For a second, she had thought she might be sent back to class. The teacher turned to her. "You were about to say something," she said. Lena shook her head. "Good," the teacher said. "We don't need distractions." She checked the clock. 2 minutes, she added. 2 minutes to walk to the piano. 2 minutes to decide how to fail. Lena stood slowly. Her legs felt weak. She took one step toward the bench. The hallway outside went quiet. No one was coming back. No one was stopping this. And whatever happened next was about to happen in front of the whole class. When the students returned, the teacher was already standing by the piano. "Everyone, take your seats," she said. "We will finish evaluations now." The room settled quickly. She tapped her clipboard. "We are behind schedule. We'll move directly to the next performer." Her eyes lifted. "Lena." Every head turned. Lena felt the room lean toward her. The teacher added, "This will be a full performance. No stopping unless I say so." A murmur moved through the class. "This is part of your permanent record," the teacher continued. "So choose carefully what you present." Permanent. Lena stood. Her chair scraped loudly. She walked down the aisle. Each step felt too slow. The teacher gestured to the bench. "Sit." Lena sat. Her feet barely touched the floor. The teacher faced the class. "We will observe posture, accuracy, timing, and control." She looked back at Lena. "Begin when ready." Lena placed her hands above the keys. They hovered. Someone in the back coughed. Rachel leaned forward. Timothy looked at his desk. The teacher folded her arms. "No warm-up," she said. Lena's fingers trembled. She swallowed. There was no more delay. No more hiding. No more time. She lowered her hands toward the keys and wondered if the first note would end everything. A knock sounded at the door. Sharp, sudden. Lena froze with her hands still above the keys. The teacher turned, annoyed. Yes. The door opened halfway. The janitor stood there with a radio in his hand. Sorry, he said. Fire drill might be coming. Office said be ready to pause classes. A ripple moved through the room. A few students whispered. The teacher's eyes narrowed. Is it happening now? Not yet, he said. They said maybe. Maybe. Lena's heart jumped. Maybe meant delay. Maybe meant escape. The janitor hesitated. If it starts, you'll have to clear the room. Of course, the teacher said tightly. He nodded and left. The door closed. Silence returned. For a long second, nobody moved. The teacher checked the clock. If the alarm sounds, we stop, she said. Until then, we continue. She looked at Lena. Begin. Lena's hope collapsed all at once. The room leaned forward again. The clock ticked. No alarm. No footsteps. No voice from the hallway. Just the piano. The teacher said, You've already wasted enough time. Lena's hands lowered. She touched the first key. The fire alarm did not ring. The test did not stop. And the first note was about to decide everything. Louder, the teacher said before Lena even played. Lena flinched. I haven't. Sit properly. The teacher cut in. Lena shifted on the bench. Her knees knocked together. She looked back once toward her desk, toward the place she had been safe. I don't think I can, she said quietly. The teacher stepped closer. In this room, she said, we finish what we start. A boy in the front row whispered, Just play something. Lena shook her head. The teacher placed a hand on the back of the bench. Not gentle, not rough, just firm. Hands on the keys, she said. Lena didn't move. The teacher leaned in. If you refuse, that goes on your record. Record. The word landed hard. Lena closed her eyes. She placed her hands on the keyboard. They felt heavier than they should. The teacher stepped back and faced the class. This is what happens when people pretend to be something they're not, she said. A few students shifted in their seats. Lena opened her eyes. The keys were too bright, too clean. She lifted her right hand, lowered it again. Her breath came fast. The teacher said, We're waiting. Lena's fingers found their starting place. The bench creaked under her weight. The room went still. And for the first time, there was nothing between her and the sound she was about to make. The teacher did not give the signal. She checked her clipboard again. Slowly, she wrote one line, then another. Lena waited with her hands on the keys. Her wrists started to ache. The room held its breath. Someone in the back shifted. A chair creaked. The teacher said, Posture. Lena straightened. Wrists. Lena adjusted. The teacher circled the bench once, as if inspecting a machine. You look tense, she said. That never ends well. Lena said nothing. The teacher stopped beside her. We'll take a moment, she announced, so everyone can observe carefully. Observe. She faced the class. This is a good lesson. Pressure reveals ability. A boy whispered, Just start. The teacher held up one finger. Not yet. Lena's fingers began to shake. She pressed them into the keys to steady them. Her mind raced through the opening again. Don't rush. Breathe. Left hand first. The teacher glanced at the clock. We're almost out of time, she said. Almost. The word hit the room like a threat. If you're going to fail, she added. Better to fail quickly. She stepped back, folded her arms. Finally, she nodded once. Now. Lena lifted her right hand. The room leaned forward. Her finger hovered above the first note. And for one long second, nothing happened at all. Lena pressed the key. The sound came out soft. Almost too soft. A few students leaned closer. The teacher's mouth tightened. Louder, she said. Lena didn't look at her. She played the second note. Then the third. Slow. Careful. Someone in the back let out a small laugh. The melody didn't sound wrong, But it didn't sound impressive either. It sounded unsure. The teacher made a mark on her clipboard. Rachel crossed her arms. Timothy shifted in his seat. Lena's hands trembled as she moved into the fourth measure. Her left hand hesitated. For half a second, she hit the wrong key. A sharp note cut through the room. A few students sucked in their breath. "There it is," someone whispered. The teacher lifted her pen. Lena's heart dropped. She froze. The wrong note echoed in her head. She swallowed hard. Her fingers hovered above the keys. The teacher said, "Continue." Lena closed her eyes. She took one breath. Then she started again. This time, her left hand found the right place. The melody smoothed out. The room stayed silent. No laughter. No whispers. The teacher leaned forward slightly. The music was still quiet. Still small. But it wasn't falling apart anymore. Lena kept playing. And nobody could tell yet if she was about to fail, or if something else was just beginning. Lena kept her eyes closed. She let the next phrase unfold the way her hands remembered, not the way her fear wanted. The notes lined up. Not fast. Not flashy. Clean. Her left hand settled into a steady pattern. The right hand followed, cautious but precise. The wrong note from before began to feel distant. A few students straightened in their seats. The teacher stopped writing. She leaned her head slightly, as if checking something she didn't expect to hear. Lena moved into the next section, the one with the crossing hands. Her fingers hesitated at the shift, then landed correctly. No stumble, no scrape. The rhythm held. Timothy lifted his head. Rachel uncrossed her arms. The room grew quieter than before. Not the tense quiet of waiting for failure. A different quiet. Listening quiet. The teacher's pen stayed frozen above the paper. Lena opened her eyes for the first time and looked at the keys. They were exactly where she thought they'd be. She reached the first small run. 3 notes up, 2 down. She played it once. Perfect. A girl in the front row blinked in surprise. The teacher shifted her weight. This was not what she had planned for. Lena moved into the next phrase. Her shoulders relaxed without her noticing. The melody started to sound like something. Not a test. Not an exercise. A piece. The teacher cleared her throat. Didn't speak. Just listened. And for the first time since Lena sat at that bench, the question in the room was no longer, how badly will she fail? It was something else. Something dangerous. How good is she really? Lena moved into the middle section. The tempo changed. Not faster. Harder. Her left hand began a pattern that didn't repeat cleanly. It slipped between beats. Timothy's eyes widened. He leaned forward without meaning to. Rachel's fingers twitched on her own lap, mirroring the movement she was watching. This part was not in the beginner books. This part was not for students who guessed their way through lessons. Lena's right hand crossed over the left, then back again. She didn't look down. She didn't search for the keys. She knew where they were. A boy in the second row whispered, "That's hard." The teacher heard him. She stiffened. Lena reached a passage with fast alternating notes. Her fingers blurred slightly, not sloppy, controlled. Each note landed exactly where it should. Timothy shook his head once, almost to himself. Rachel's mouth parted. The teacher took a step closer to the piano. Her eyes were no longer cold. They were calculating. This was not luck. This was training. Lena moved into a run that climbed the keyboard in a smooth arc. She didn't rush it. She didn't miss. The run ended in a soft chord, perfectly balanced. The room was completely still now. No coughs. No shifting. No whispers. The teacher's clipboard lowered a few inches. She stared at Lena's hands, at the way her wrists stayed loose, at the way her fingers curved naturally, at the way her shoulders stayed relaxed. This was not a child pretending. This was someone who had done this before. Many times. The teacher's jaw tightened. She glanced at the clock, then back at the keyboard, and for the first time, the doubt in her face was visible to everyone. The door opened slowly. No one noticed at first. Lena was in the middle of a long phrase, her hands moving in steady circles across the keys. The melody held the room. Mr. Grant from the district office stood in the doorway. He had come to observe classes. He stopped when he heard the music. He didn't speak. He leaned against the doorframe and listened. The teacher saw him a second later. Her shoulders stiffened. She glanced at the clipboard, then at Lena, then back at the door. She took a small step forward, as if to interrupt. Lena moved into another section, a difficult one, the kind that showed control, not speed. Mr. Grant's eyebrows lifted. He stepped fully into the room. He folded his hands and stayed silent. The teacher hesitated. If she stopped this now, she would have to explain why. In front of him, she stayed where she was. Lena played on. The music filled the space between the desks, between the teacher and the door, between the old order and something new. Mr. Grant shifted his weight. He looked at the class. Every student was watching the piano. Not the teacher, not the clipboard, just the girl on the bench. The teacher tried to regain control. She cleared her throat. Lena didn't stop. She didn't even flinch. The authority in the room was no longer where it had been. It had moved, quietly, from the front of the class, to the sound coming from the keys, and everyone could feel it happening. Lena reached the final section, the part her mother used to call the test. Her hands moved faster now, not rushed, certain. The melody rose. A girl in the front row covered her mouth. Someone whispered, "She's really good." A chair scraped as a student stood without realizing it. Then another. The teacher said, "Sit down." But no one listened. Lena played the long run. Notes spilled upward like water climbing stairs. She didn't miss one. Timothy stood. He started clapping without sound, just hands pressed together in shock. Rachel stood too. Her face had gone pale. The teacher's voice broke. "This is not." She stopped, because the room was no longer hers. A phone appeared in the second row. Then another. Red recording lights glowed. No one hid them. No one cared. Lena reached the final chord. She held it, let it fade, then lifted her hands. Silence. For one full breath. Then applause exploded. Not polite clapping. Real clapping. Students stood. Whistles. A shout from the back. The teacher stood alone at the front. Her clipboard slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. No one looked at it. Mr. Grant stepped forward. He said, softly but clearly, "Who taught you to play like that?" Lena looked up, startled. "My mother," she said. The applause grew louder. The teacher tried to speak. No one heard her. The recording phones kept rolling. And in that moment, the story of this class stopped belonging to the teacher and started belonging to everyone else. They walked in silence to the small office near the auditorium. Mr. Grant closed the door behind them. The noise from the hallway faded. Lena sat on the edge of the chair. Her hands were still trembling. "You're not in trouble," he said first. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He looked at her for a long moment. "Where did you learn that piece?" "My mom," Lena said. "How long did she teach you?" "Since I was 3. He wrote something down. "Formal training?" "Yes." "Daily?" "Yes." He stopped writing. "Why did it stop?" Lena stared at her hands. "She got sick," she said. "We sold the piano." Mr. Grant leaned back slowly. "How long since you touched a real one before today?" 14 months. He exhaled. "And you practiced how?" She hesitated, then reached into her backpack and pulled out the folded paper. She spread it on his desk. A hand-drawn keyboard. Every key measured. He stared at it. "You practiced on this," he said. "Every night." He was quiet for a moment. "That explains the control," he said finally. He looked at her. "And the discipline." There was a knock. The principal stepped in, holding a phone. "The video is already spreading," he said. "Parents are calling." Mr. Grant nodded. "Good." He turned back to Lena. "There's a regional academy that evaluates talent like this," he said. "They don't take walk-ins, but they do take referrals." Lena's breath caught. "I'm not promising anything yet," he added. They'll want to test you themselves. Test. Again. But different this time. With proper access, he said. You could go very far. Lena pressed her hands together to stop them shaking. Outside the office, voices were rising. Inside, for the first time in a long time, someone was not asking how she failed. They were asking how far she could go. Mrs. Carter stood outside the office when they came out. Her face was tight. This has gone far enough, she said. That recording violates policy. It needs to be deleted. Mr. Grant didn't slow. It's evidence, he said. She disrupted my class, Mrs. Carter insisted. The principal stepped between them. No, he said. You did. Mrs. Carter opened her mouth. Mr. Grant cut her off. You're relieved from evaluations effective immediately. She froze. The hallway went silent, and the control she had almost taken back slipped out of her hands for good. By the time Lena went home that evening, the video had left the school. It was in group chats, then on a parent page, then on a music forum someone's cousin followed. Her phone buzzed on the walk up the stairs. She didn't own a phone, but her dad's old one lit up in her pocket. Messages stacked before she reached the door. Inside, her dad listened to the story twice. Then he watched the video once. Then again. He didn't speak for a long time. The next morning, the principal called her out of class. Several programs have asked about you, he said. We're setting up meetings. By lunch, 2 teachers from other schools had stopped her in the hallway. By the end of the day, an envelope waited in the office. Invitation to audition. Not acceptance. Just a door. Students looked at her differently now. Some smiled. Some whispered. Some asked, "Is it true?" She nodded. She didn't know what else to say. At home, her dad wrote names and numbers on a scrap of paper. Don't get your hopes up, he said. She tried not to. That night, an email arrived from a conservatory she had only seen in magazines. Subject line, preliminary interest. Not an offer. Not yet. Just interest. She closed the laptop and sat on her bed. The room felt the same. Small. Quiet. Temporary. Everything was moving very fast. And she still didn't know which door would stay open, and which one would close first. The meeting was called before second period. Teachers were pulled from class one by one. Doors closed. Phones stayed on the table. By lunch, everyone knew something was wrong. Mrs. Carter did not return to the music room. In the afternoon, Lena was called to the office again. This time her father was there. The superintendent sat across from them. We've opened a formal review, he said. What happened in that classroom did not meet district standards. He slid a paper across the desk. A written apology. Signed. Mrs. Carter's name at the bottom. She will not be teaching evaluations this year, he added. And she will attend corrective training. Lena's father nodded once. The superintendent continued. We are also revising our performance policies. No student will be required to perform without preparation again. Lena stared at the paper. An apology felt small compared to the fear she had carried. But it was something. When she returned to class, her seat had been moved. Not to the front. Just out of the corner. A small change. In the teacher's lounge, voices were low. In the hallway, a poster went up by the end of the week. Student Dignity Guidelines. Nobody said her name out loud. But everyone knew why it was there. Mrs. Carter did not speak to Lena again. 2 weeks later, her substitute arrived with a different tone. Gentler. Careful. The system had not broken, but it had shifted. And for the first time, the rules of that building had changed, because one quiet student had been pushed too far. The first offer came on a Tuesday, a letter with a heavy seal and careful handwriting. Full assessment appointment. Travel covered. 2 days later, a second email arrived. Partial scholarship, pending evaluation. Her father read every word twice, then folded the papers and put them back in the envelope like they might disappear if he touched them too long. On Thursday, a woman from the district drove them across town. She led them into a small practice room with a real piano inside. Use this any time, she said. After school. Weekends too. Lena sat down slowly. She touched the keys like they might vanish. When she played the first chord, her hands shook. Not from fear, from relief. A week later, a retired teacher volunteered to give her lessons for free. Twice a week. Strict. Precise. Exactly the way her mother had taught. Then came the instrument. A used upright, delivered on a Saturday morning. The movers carried it up the stairs one step at a time. When they set it against the wall, her father leaned his forehead against the wood and closed his eyes. They tuned it that afternoon. When the first clean note filled the room, Lena laughed and cried at the same time. For the first time in 14 months, practice had sound again. Schedules filled the calendar. Audition dates, lesson times, travel plans. Nothing was guaranteed. Every door still said maybe. But now there were doors. Real ones. And every night, when she sat at the piano and played until her fingers ached, she knew one thing for certain. The path she had lost was no longer gone. It was open again. 6 months later, the building looked the same from the outside. Inside, it didn't. The music room had a new teacher. Younger, quieter. She wrote students' names on the board and asked how they wanted them pronounced. Evaluations were optional now. Sign-up sheets replaced surprise tests. In the front row, a nervous boy practiced scales out loud without being told to stop. In the back, a girl raised her hand for the first time all year. Lena wasn't there anymore. She took the bus across town every morning to the academy. The halls were bigger. The pianos were better. The students were serious. On her first day, she got lost twice. On her third day, she failed a sight reading test and cried in the bathroom. On her 5th day, she passed the same test. Her schedule was full now. Theory, technique, ensemble. In her locker, a photo of her mother sat taped to the door. In the old school, Mrs. Carter's name was gone from the website. She had taken a leave. No one said why. The dignity poster still hung by the stairs. Students walked past it without stopping. They didn't know who it was for, only that it was there. One afternoon, the new teacher played the video for her class. She paused it halfway through. "This," she said, "is why we never humiliate talent." No one laughed. Across town, Lena practiced in a room with thick walls and a window that looked out over the street. She missed notes. She fixed them. She kept going. Because the place she had once been silenced was now only a chapter, and the music, at last, had somewhere safe to grow. The hall was full before Lena touched the bench. Parents filled the rows. Teachers stood along the walls. At the front sat 3 judges from the national program. One of them was Mr. Grant. She recognized him and looked away quickly. Her name was announced. Not whispered. Not mispronounced. Clear. Lena Chen. She walked onto the stage. No one laughed. No one whispered. They waited. She sat, adjusted the bench, placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, she thought of the paper keyboard, of the kitchen table, of the day she almost ran from the room. Then she played. This time, there was no fear in the opening. No testing. No trap. Just music. The first piece ended. The hall stayed silent. Then one judge nodded. She played the second. Harder. Longer. When she finished, the applause rose slowly. Then all at once, people stood. Mr. Grant stood with them. After, in the hallway, the director of the program shook her hand. "You belong here," she said. An hour later, an envelope waited in the office. Full scholarship. For years. Her father cried into his hands. Outside, a woman from the old school hugged her. "We tell that story now," she said. "About you." Lena nodded. That night, she sat at her piano and played the same piece she had almost failed. Only now she played it all the way through. And for the first time, there was no question left about who she was or where she belonged.